Okay, welcome everybody. Today's daf, Bezras Hashem, is Masechta Avodah Zarah number 56, Nun Ve'ov. And we're going to begin from Nun Hey Amid Beis right after the Mishnah. So in the Mishnah, we're discussing over here, and you got to see the picture. And once you get the picture, everything becomes clear. The picture is on the screen here, which is a ancient wine press, or the mechanics of an ancient wine press. We are in the box over here. They would put the grapes and then have a weight on the grapes and press them down, then bring them back up and press them down. So as the juices start to flow from this wine press, which is called a gas, it would flow through like a little pipe. Okay, we'll call it a pipe, and then end up in a little basket, a wicker basket. And this wicker basket would like strain it a little bit, strain the juices a little bit to take out some of the pits and peels. And then the juice of the grapes would end up in this pit, which was tarred. So our Mishnah was discussing, we know a guy touches the wine. Midrabanon, it's usher to benefit from that wine, right? You're not allowed to benefit from the wine. A gzera of yayin nesach. So when is it called wine? That was the question of the Gemara. So that was the question of the Mishnah. So Mishnah decided that only if it enters the pit is it called wine. But if it doesn't enter the pit, as long as it's, let's say, in the wine press or even in the funnel, it's not considered wine. So if the guy would touch any part besides the juices that entered the pit, it's not considered yayin nesach. That was the opinion of our Mishnah. So now we're just going to begin with what Rav Huna said. Rav Huna disagrees. Rav Huna says, okay, just right after the Gemara in Nehemiah Beis. Rav Huna said, Yain kiven shehisra lihi mashech oisa yain nesach. Wine, as soon as the juices of the grapes, as soon as it starts to flow, it automatically becomes potential to be yayin nesach. In other words, if the guy would touch the juice of a grape just right after you squeezed it, according to Rav Huna, that is aser. That wine becomes aser. So the Gemara says, how could Rav Huna argue on a Mishnah? So now we learned in our Mishnah, our Mishnah just got through saying that you can buy wine from the wine press, juice from the wine press, grape juice, obviously, even if you saw the guy put his hand and swirl around the juices to take out some grapes there. It's not a problem. It's not yayin nesach. So how could our Rav Huna argue in our Mishnah? Rav Huna says, Begas pekuka maleya. You can see it in the picture that Rav Huna says that our Mishnah is talking about where the whole place, the wine press was stuffed and the juices didn't move. It just filled up the wine press. It didn't go into a pit. And therefore, since it doesn't move, so then only then is those juices not considered wine. That's what Rav Huna said. Tashema, come in here. The Mishnah said that it doesn't become yayin nesach until it enters the pit. So it seems that the Mishnah is trying to say that no matter, even if the wine, the juice will flow to the pit, it doesn't become yayin nesach until it enters the pit. But prior to that, it's not yayin nesach. Answers the Gemara Hachanami b'shas bekuka v'mleya. It's talking about where the exit to the wine press was stuffed, and so the juices stay in one place. Only then is that juices that come out, according to Rav Huna, not potential to become yayin nesach. But if there was no stopping, if there's no stopper by the exit, as you can see, if there's no stopper by the exit, the wine already in the wine press, since it's eventually going to flow out into the pit, the juices in the wine press, according to Rav Huna, as you can see, is going to be aser. So Tashema, come in here. Let's see what our Mishnah said. Yorad babor. If the juices go to the pit, masha babor aser, v'ashar mutar. That whatever is in the pit is aser, and whatever remains in the wine press is mutar. So we see clearly our Mishnah is not discussing where the wine is not flowing. The Mishnah clearly is discussing where the wine is flowing from the wine press to the pit. And the Mishnah says, despite that, the wine that's in the wine press is mutter. It's only what's in the pit that's usher if the guy touches it. Amar Rav Huna explained, like Kash, it's not difficult. Kam Mishnah Rishayna. In the Mishnah Rishayna, Kam Mishnah Achrayna. There were two different, and later on they became more strict. Sometimes the Rabbanah made a gzera and said that it's wine only if it reaches a certain, if it's only a certain place, but but then they went even more strict to say that later on that even the juices coming out of the grapes already, the guy touches it, it becomes asaba naha. The Tanya we learned in the Brayso. In the beginning you say badad. What does it mean? It's a abbreviation. Ein boitzrin im anochri bagas. One is not allowed to harvest grapes with a goy in his and to place the grapes into his wine press. That has to do with a gezerah. Also ligrem tuma lechulin shvar Yisrael. You're not allowed to cause fruits to become tamei in Eretz Yisrael. That's we don't want fruits to become tamei. If you help the guy put grapes into his wine press, then the grapes are going to become tamei, and everything becomes tamei because the wine press is tamei, and therefore you're not allowed to help a guy make fruits tamei in Eretz Yisrael. They wanted, according to Rashi, they wanted that in the supermarkets in Eretz Yisrael, they wanted that they should be sold only things that are tahar, because people, you'll have a hechsher that's tahar, because they wanted only people to eat tahar things, because many people are makbid to eat tahar things, not tumah things, even though there's no issa to eat tumah, but they wanted people to have tahar things. So therefore, helping a goy be mitama his peiros, his fruits, that you're not allowed to help a goy mitama his fruits. Ve'ein dorchin im Yisrael she'oisa peroisa betuma, but for a yid, not only are you not allowed to cut a yid who, let's say, a non-frum Jew who doesn't watch and he doesn't care about tuma, a Jew is not allowed to help him harvest his fruits and put it into his fry. A frum Jew is not allowed to help a non-frum Jew put his grapes into the wine press, because and not only that, even after the grapes became tama, you're not allowed to help the non-frum Jew press on those grapes. You're not allowed to help somebody who's doing an avera. What is the avera that the Jew is doing? He's being matama fruits, and let's assume there's an issa to be matama fruits. Once it becomes tame, what's the problem? He did an avera, so you don't want to get involved while he's doing the avera. Avol darchim imanochri bagas. If a goy asks a yid to help him press the grapes, it's fine, no problem, because first of all, a goy is not a problem if once he is no isser to once the thing is tamei, that's it. So a yid is allowed to help him press his grapes. He didn't really do an avera because a goy is not under the jurisdiction of the rabbanon. But you can say, how could he help the goy press his grapes as soon as the juices come out of the grapes? The grape is it should be wine. So this brisa holds like our Mishnah that the juices coming out of the grapes in the wine press is not considered wine. So therefore, if the guy would touch the wine, even if he would touch it, it's not aser b'hana. You see, if it was yayin nesach, a Jew is not allowed to be involved in a business of yayin nesach. But since the Jew is only standing in the wine press and just stamping on it like in the old Lucy, so then it's mutter because the Jew is not dealing in yayin nesach. Then they said dalid based dalid. Ein dorchen im anochri bagas mishum de Rav Huna. You're not allowed to even stamp and press the grapes with a goy in his wine press, because we are concerned, Rav Huna, that the goy's grapes, the juices coming out of the grapes, is considered wine, and therefore a Jew is not allowed to be helping a goy with his yayin nesach. It's aser b'hana. You're not allowed to benefit from aser. You're not allowed to take a wage dealing with aser hana. So that's why we say a gid is not, because we are concerned, like Rav Huna said, that as soon as the juices leave the grapes, it is considered um, it is considered like wine. The ain bites from Yisrael shaisa peraisa betumah v'kol shekin shein darchen. You're not allowed to harvest with a Jew his grapes, and certainly you're not allowed to press his grapes with a Jew that doesn't care about tumah, is matama his fruits. And here is even additional problem. Even if you don't hold that there's a problem of matama fruits, but if you allow a yid to be mitama his fruits prior to giving truma, that's a big problem because when he's going to give off truma, he's going to give off tamei truma. So if this Jew doesn't care about mitzvahs and he's cuts his fruits and doesn't care about tumah, a frum yid is not allowed to take a job with him, not only helping him cut his grapes, but also certainly not pressing in the wine press with him. But you're allowed to help, according to this brisa, cut a harvest with a guy in the wine press, even though it's going to be the guy is going to be matama the fruits. The guy is not commanded at all. We don't. It doesn't. This brisa holds that they were never required a guy to keep tahara, keep his fruits in tahara. We don't care. This brisa holds you're allowed to cause tuma in Eretz Yisrael, chul in Eretz Yisrael. Bottom line, here's the bottom line. We don't. Rav Huna made the comment that the Mishnah was the first gezerah. The Mishnah, our gezerah of the Mishnah was that wine becomes wine only when it reaches the pit. While it's in the wine press, it's not considered wine. So if a guy would touch the juice in the wine press, it's not aser bahana. However, later, many, many, many years later, they went even stricter, that even if a guy would touch wine with juices that come out of the grapes that's in the wine press, that would be considered like wine, and he would aser it bahana. So, the Eina Oisa Yayin Esech Achie Lebar. Our Mishnah says it doesn't become Yayin Esech until it goes to the pit. Says the Gemara of Tanya, we learned to Baraisa, Yayin Mishi Yikpa. It's never called wine until you wait a little bit after it gets into the pit. When it goes into the pit, sort of like the pits and the peels float up to the top. So it's not just when it enters the pit, it's wine. According to this brisa, the what makes it wine is when you see like a foaming, it bubbles up and you can see all the pits and peels float to the top. So this is a later determination of when wine is. So that's the question. Now, what context is this price talking about? Maestris. That we know that you have to give off maestris. But when you walk into your apple orchard prior and you're just working in the field, you're allowed to take an apple. But once you have finished the stacking of the apples and you're bringing it home, then you have to give off trumas and maestris. Same thing, if you have grapes, you're allowed to drink from the grapes. If you're going to plan to make wine from it, you're allowed to drink a little bit of a snack with it. But once it becomes wine, you're not allowed to drink it anymore until you give off trumas and maestris. So in maestris, we say that when does something become wine? When the sediment floats to the top. So how could our Mishnah seems to disagree with the brisa? Our Mishnah says that it's called wine as soon as it enters the pit. And this brisa says regarding maestris, it has to float. You have to have the sediment float to the top, and only afterwards it becomes wine. Rava says, "Lekasha, it's not difficult." Harab Kiva, Harabanim. There's two different opinions. That now we learned in the Mishnah, Yayin Mishier the bar. Yayin is called wine as soon as it enters the pit, like our Mishnah. Rabbi Kiva says Mishiyikba when it floats to the top. After it enters the pit, the sediment has to float to the top, which is a later time period. So you can't ask a question. Our Mishnah is like the Tanakama. So Ibayalahu, keep it the bar, keep it the chavis. When did Rabbi Kiva says it has to float to the top? There's after the pit, by the way, and they take away some of the sediment. They take the wine, they take the juice that's in the pit, and they put it into barrels. And then once it's in the barrels, there's an addition type of sediment that floats to the top. So when Rabbi Kiva says it's called wine, did he means when it floats to the top, when it's still in the pit, or even in a much later time, when they actually put it into barrels and it floats to the top? That's when it becomes wine. So maybe Rabbi Kiva is even more, I would say, more lenient to when you actually call something wine. It's in a much later stage after it's in the barrel. Toshma, come in here. Tanya, we learned to the Brisa. Yayin, mishiyikva afal pisha kafa, koilet menegasal yarmin etziner v'shoisa. That the the Brisa seems to say that even this Brisa holds that when it floats to the top in the pit, then it's called wine. And despite that, if the wine in the pit, if the juices in the pit is called wine, but you're allowed to take from the juices that's in the wine press and from the pipe. Like you can take the juice from here and you can take the juices that are in the wine press. It's only after the sediment floats to the top that this in the pit is called wine. So we see that no one deals with the barrels. People deal with the pit. And therefore, when you want to say Rabbi Akiva says it's wine after it floats to the top, he's talking about wine that it's only when it's juice in the pit that when it floats to the top, when it stays in the pit for a little bit, a little while, and then the sediment floats to the top. Only then it's called wine. So that's what we say. Shmamino, from here we see keeping the bar coming. We're talking about when it floats to the top while it's in the pit, not when it's in the barrel. Shmamino. So what are we holding right now? We only have two opinions. One opinion is a Tana, an our Mishnah, and a Mishnah Maisris that says it's called wine as soon as it enters the pit. Then there's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that it's only called wine only after it's in the pit for like a little while after when the sediment floats to the top. Says the Gemara, "V'atanu Rav Zid Breid Rav Yishayav Yayin is Mishyer Lebar v'Yikba." The Tanakama holds that wine is when it goes to the pit and then floats to the top. So the Tanakama seems to hold that it's only after its sediment floats to the top, only then it's called wine. Rabbi Kiva Oima Mishiyish Lebechavius. Rabbi Kiva says when you pour you fish out the juice, fish out the wine that's already in the pit and put it into barrels, only then it's called wine. Prior to that, it's not. So therefore, how do you reconcile this opinion of Rabbi Akiva and with the previous opinion of Rabbi Akiva, Mishiyikba? And how do you reconcile the Tanakama? Because it seems that the Tanakama in Rav Zvid's version holds you need Yikba. You have to say that's what the Brisa and the previous Brisa meant. That wine is called wine only after it enters the pit and it floats to the top. And this is the opinion of Tanakama. Rabbi Kiva was the one that says that you have to put it into barrels. So therefore, we have three opinions. Our opinion in our Mishnah holds that wine is called wine as soon as it enters the pit. Then you have the opinion of the Tanakama of Maisris that says it's called wine only after it's in the pit for a little bit, and you have Yikbeh. And Rabbi Kiva says it's called wine only after you enter it into barrels. So what you're going to say there are three opinions here? Are you going to say there are three opinions? And says the Gemara, loy. We don't want to say there are three opinions. Really, our Tanakama and our Mishnah would agree that it's called wine only after it enters the pit and you have yikba. But shiny yayin nesach tachmira be'ler rabbanim. Yayin nesach is different, so they went even stricter to call it yayin nesach. You call it yayin as soon as it enters the pit. But really, our Tana would agree that by Maisris, it's not called wine until you had being in the pit and also yikba. So there's no three opinions. And we go to Ahmed Beis. Rava asked this question. He didn't make this differentiations between Yayin Nesach because Rava started off this whole Bryce question. How could our Mishnah disagree with a Mishnah in Maisris? He doesn't make that differentiation. He's going to have the opinion that there are three opinions. Opinion number one is our Mishnah that holds wine is called wine only after it enters the pit. And that's the most strictest opinion, whether Yayin Esech, whether Maisris. But the Tanakama of Maisris holds it's called wine only after it enters the pit and you have Yikba. And then you have Rabbi Kiva, the most lenient, who says when you take the juice out of the pit and bring it into the barrels, only then it's called wine. Then we learned in the Mishnah Masha Babar, also Bashar Mutar. Amar Rav Huna, loy shana l'shehichse gargusni legas, aval hichsen gargusni legas asna. We said the gargusni is that you see in the picture over here, it's that basket, the wicker basket, that the strainer. If you put wine, if they had some juices left over in this wicker basket, and you poured it back into the wine press, you poured those juices back into the wine press, then all the wine becomes usr, all the juice in the wine press is usr bahana. Now, the Gemara asks, wait a second, you just told me that it's only called wine only after it enters the pit. So even if the guy touched the juice in the wicker basket, how did that become tome? So that's first what Rav Huna said. If you didn't return the wicker basket with the juices into the wine press, then you could drink, then everything is kosher. If you poured the little extra, the minimum juices that's in that wicker basket back into the wine press, aser, because the juices in the wicker basket is yayin esach. Says the Gemara, how did the wicker basket become aser? You told me that it's only it's wine only after it enters the pit. But prior to that, it's not called wine. So even if the guy touched the juice in the wicker basket, it should not become tamei. Answers it should not become yayin esach. Answers the Gemara benitzeh. Since there's a connection of a flow between the wicker basket and the pit, so therefore it's almost as if whatever in the wicker basket is connected, is somehow connected with the pit. So we're going to imagine that there's like a flow. I can't draw it over here, but a flow that connects the wicker basket. So even if the guy touched the wine in the pit, it automatically is mitama. It automatically asers the juices that are only in the wicker basket. Says the Gemara, Shma minon nitzach chibar. Would you say that a flow connects something? It's not so simple, because really the guy is only touching the wine in the pit, and now you're telling me that because he touched the wine in the pit, and somehow there's a connection flow between the wine in the pit and the wicker basket, it's telling me that everything in the wicker basket, it becomes aser bahana. It's not true. It's not always. Not everybody agrees with that, because the wicker basket is one location and the pit is another location. Answers the Gemara, we're talking about where somehow the pit overflowed, and actually the wine in the pit flowed into the actual wine that was in the pit, reached up to the wicker basket. It reached up to the wicker basket, and the level of the wine in the pit rose to the basket, and therefore, we're going to see it on a picture. Therefore, imagine all this wine in the pit rose to the wicker basket. Therefore, we can assume what's in the wicker basket comes from the pit. And if you pour whatever in the wicker basket back into the wine press, then the wine press becomes aser. Whatever's in the wine press now is like yayin esech. Says the Gemara, a fascinating thing, and this will end. Hahu Yunuka. There was this young kid who was a precocious person. Imagine he's a 6-year-old kid. The Tana Avodah Zarah b'shitshni. By 6-year-old, he was an expert in Masechta Avodah Zarah. So just because he's a young kid, you could ask him halachas. They asked him a question: Mal lidrach im anachri bagas? Can a Jew get hired by a guy to help him press his grapes? Amalahu, he said, darchim im anachri bagas. You could help a guy press his grapes in the wine press. Says the Gemara, but isn't the guy going to touch the juice in the wine press and make it yayin nesach? And according to Rav Huna, already in the wine press, you could, if the guy touches it, it becomes yayin nesach. And now the Jew is working with yayin nesach. Answers the Gemara. So what the kid advised, the the guy's hand was tied up, so he couldn't touch the juice coming out of the wine press. He was just stomping with his feet. But isn't he stepping on the juices with his feet? And by stepping on the grapes with his feet, he's touching the juices. So the guy should aser the juices like as if he's making it yayin esach. And says the Gemara, nisach the regel lo yishmei nisach. The fact that he's touching it with his feet is not a call is not called a nisach. It's not called being menasach the wine. Okay, we're going to stop right over here by a uvda, and we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. So, but one thing you do see is that they were asking a Yenuka questions, although he was only 6 years old. I guess that's where this famous name Yenuka comes from, as we're so familiar with.
Hmm.
Okay.
Thanks, bro.